everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to bring you guys my mid-December reading wrap-up. Now, this one is not going to be a get ready with me style wrap-up. I have been doing those recently and they've been a fun time, but I will be honest with you, they are also really difficult for me to film because I'm very particular about how I want my makeup to look. And so it takes me a while to do my makeup, and then trying to talk about books to you guys, to the camera on top of that, is not the easiest thing to do, and they are not very easy videos to edit. And so I decided not to do them for December, partly because of that, but mainly because I have been doing weekly vlogs for the entire month of December. So I have been discussing all of the books that I've read so far this month in detail already for the vlog. So I think what I'm gonna do for this video is just give bullet points about the 17 books that I've read so far this month. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. So the first book I have is Lady Daring Takes a Lover by Julie Anne Long. This is book 1 in her Palace of Rogues series. I also read book 2 this month, but I will get to that one much later in this video. But this one was just really fun. I gave it 4 stars. The thing about this book though is that the romance was not my favorite part about this book. My favorite part about this book is seeing this unlikely friendship form between Lady Daring, our main character, and Angelique, who turns out to be her dead husband's mistress. And so they become friends and they open this boarding house together, and then Lady Daring has her romance throughout the book. But yeah, their friendship was my favorite part, and also just like the very quirky people that come to stay at the boarding house. It's just so much fun. So I gave it 4 stars because the romance didn't absolutely blow me away. Next up, I reread Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. Gave it 5 stars upon reread. You know, I really just need to reread more of my favorite books more often than I do, but I always just get excited about books that I haven't read yet. You know, there's just so many books on my TBR that I want to get to that rereading favorites definitely falls to the wayside. But I just love like the cozy bed and breakfast vibes of this one, because the main premise is that Eve ends up going to work at this bed and breakfast as a chef, even though she's not really a chef, but she knows how to cook. And there's the Grump Sunshine thing going on, and I love that both of our characters have autism, just different variations of that, because of course there's a very big spectrum, and I just relate to Eve in a lot of ways, even though we are seemingly 2 very different people, but there's a lot of things that I do relate to her on. So it's adorable. And if you haven't read it yet, this is your sign that you absolutely need to before 2021 is over. So next is You've Reached Sam by Dustin Tao. Now this is the book that has inspired me to want to binge all of the YA contemporaries now. That is the genre that I am craving at the moment. And so this was released earlier this year. I had an e-arc of this off of NetGalley. The cover is definitely my favorite cover of 2021. This is a piece of art. Like, I literally would hang this in this room. Like, it's absolutely stunning. And I will set up the plot of this one just because I feel like maybe a lot of you haven't heard of this book. But basically we have Julie, and she's been dating this guy Sam for a while. Sam ends up dying in a very tragic car accident. And so of course she's mourning that loss. Of course she's dealing with so much grief. And she calls his phone just to hear his voicemail one more time, you know, just to hear his voice. And Sam actually picks up. So the plot goes on from there. The way this explores grief is just everything. I loved it so much. You can't help but root for Sam and Julie, even though like obviously they can no longer be together, and it's beautiful, it's stunning. Of course I give it 5 stars. Cannot recommend it highly enough. Easily one of the best YA books that I read this year. Next, I read The Trouble with Mistletoe by Jill Shalvis. This is actually the December pick for the Ravished by Romance book club, which is run by Jess from Peace Love Books and Lacey from Lacey Book Lover. So I'm gonna link all of that information down in the description. This is just a really cute small town adult romance. I had never read from Jill Shalvis before. For some reason, I just kind of assumed that she wrote more women's fiction, but this is definitely a romance novel. That's definitely what this centers around, and it was just adorable. This also centers around animals a lot because our heroine is a pet groomer and she owns a pet store. It's adorable. It's just really cute. So I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I read Sinner by Sierra Simone. This is like book 2 kind of in her Priest series. This is more of like a companion novel. You can definitely read these as standalones. I gave this one 4 stars. I didn't love it as much as Priest, but I still really enjoyed it. This one is a taboo romance. It's an age gap romance, and it also centers around this guy, Sean, who's kind of a womanizer. He's kind of like not a good guy. But we see throughout the book that he actually is a good man. He's a good person. And then we have Zenny, who's 19 years old, and she is a postulant, meaning that she is someone preparing to be a nun. So yes, this series, you know, definitely has darker themes to it, and they're definitely taboo. But there were parts of this that I thought were stunning. I adore Sierra Simone's writing, but I just didn't emotionally connect to these characters as much as I did the ones in Priest. So ultimately I gave it 4 stars, but I still really enjoyed it. Okay, so next up I have a novella that I actually have not talked about in any of my reading vlogs for December because it was that insignificant to me. This is Let It Snow by Cassie Cross. I basically read this late last Sunday. Basically with my weekly reading vlogs, I end them on Sundays and then I start the next vlog on Monday. So I read this novella in between the 2 vlogs essentially, and I gave this 3 stars. It was just okay, unfortunately. This is basically just a really sweet and cute friends to lovers, forced proximity, snowed in romance. You know, for it being a novella, mainly what disappointed me was that for me, it took them too long to become lovers. You know, this is only like an 80-page novella, and I don't think we got anything romantic between the 2 of them until like the 66% mark. And for me, that's just like a little too late. I don't know, for a novella, I expect it to happen a bit earlier, but it still is really adorable. Like, this is a childhood friends to lovers romance, and like it is very sweet. So I would recommend it, especially if you love the friends to lovers trope. So now we are going into week 2 of December, which was the historical romance readathon, and coincidentally I finally got my historical romance readathon t-shirt from Bonfire. Basically the hosts of the readathon, Jess from Peace Love Books, Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers, and Lisa from Remarkably Lisa, they released merch for the historical romance readathon, and so I finally got my t-shirt, so that's why I'm wearing it in today's video. I love the color. It's also like a really good quality shirt, so I think the merch is still available, and if it is, I'll link it down in the description below. But there's a lot of different kinds of like designs and stuff, but this one was my personal favorite. So let's kind of quickly go over the books that I read for this readathon. I read mostly like Christmas historical romances, which was really fun, but the first one was a fail, and it was the group book for the readathon. That is Lady Sophie's Christmas Wish by Grace Burrows. This was, I DNF'd it at like the 42% mark because it's mainly about our hero and heroine taking care of a random baby, and I don't give a shit about babies in books. I just don't. I'm cool with reading about kids in books, but like they need to be old enough to have an actual personality. Otherwise, yeah, I don't give a shit. Animals are a different story, but babies, I do not care. So I was just bored. So then the next book that I read was Kissing Under the Mistletoe. So this is an anthology of Christmas historical romances by Suzanne Enoch, Amelia Gray, and Anna Bennett. I truly enjoyed all 3 of these, although I will say Amelia Gray's was probably the weakest. I gave it maybe like 3.5 stars. And Anna Bennett's story was definitely my personal favorite because there's just great fake dating going on. I adore fake dating or fake courting in historical romances in particular. There's just a vibe to it that I really, really love. So I recommend this. I think I ended up giving this 4 or 4.5 stars as a whole, but I truly enjoyed this anthology. Next up was Her Virgin Duke by Nicola Davidson. Nicola Davidson is, at this point, one of my favorite historical romance authors. She mainly writes novellas, but she does have a few full-length novels that I can't wait to get to. She writes erotic historical romances, so definitely be prepared for that when going into her books. But this one, the premise is just everything. This is about Bennett. He is a duke. He's just known for being like very straight-laced, very awkward. And at this point in his life, he's 25, he wants to get married, but he just feels so awkward around women. Like he has no idea like how to go about finding a wife. And so he basically ends up going to this pleasure club, this sex club. That what was really cool is that this club is so much more. There's a wing that's dedicated to just like gambling, and there's like a supper club, and then there's the pleasure club. But our heroine is Delilah. She's known as the Mistress of Sin. She runs this pleasure club. And so they end up meeting and sparks fly. Things get steamy very fast. This was just so good. Like, Nicola Davidson knows how to perfectly balance like the steamy scenes, like the erotic parts of the book, with a truly swoony romance. It's so amazing. And more of you need to read from Nicola Davidson, because this novella only has like 80 something ratings, and in my opinion that is a crime, because this is so good. So of course I gave it 5 stars. Next up we have Miracle on Ladies Mile by Joanna Shupe. This is a Gilded Age romance novella, and I enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. It's not my favorite thing by Joanna Shupe. The hero frustrated me quite a bit. He's a single father, and for most of this novella he's a pretty shitty father to his daughter. This is also an age gap romance. Our heroine's 19 and the hero's 30, and it's really cool because she is a window dresser for the department store that he co-owns. And so yeah, I did really enjoy it. I would recommend trying it out. Next up we have what is definitely my most disappointing read of December so far. Yikes. That is My American Duchess by Eloisa James. I fully expected to love this. This was featured in my 5-star predictions video, and I ended up giving it like 2.5 stars. Like 3 stars on Goodreads, but really 2.5 stars. Basically, I adored the first half. The second half for me quickly went downhill. I was bored. I don't know if Eloisa James is the author for me, but also the hero in particular was really pissing me off in the second half. I loved Mary, spelled M-E-R-R-Y. Our heroine, loved her so much. She's an American heiress, as you can tell from the title. And yeah, I love her, but kind of hated the hero by the end. And I'm sad that I didn't love this as much as everybody else does, but it is what it is. Next up we have The Captain's Midwinter Bride by Liana de la Rosa. This is the first time that I am reading something from this author, and it will not be the last because I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. It's a historical romance that is a marriage in trouble story, which that is like my absolute favorite romance trope. And it was just really sweet to see these 2 characters. They're older main characters. They're both in their 40s. The premise kind of centers around the fact that their daughter, who is about 20, I think, is getting ready to get married. Philip is was a naval captain, and now he is back home, and so now him and his wife are finding their way back to each other, and it was just really cool to see them as a couple, but also to see them be parents together. Like, so good, really sweet, really wholesome, but also had the perfect amount of steam. Next up we have, this is a reread of How the Duke Stole Christmas by Tessa Dare, Sarah McLean, Sophie Jordan, and Joanna Shupe. This is yet another anthology of historical romance Christmas stories. I enjoyed this even more upon reread. The first time that I read it, I gave it 3.5 stars, but this time I gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed all of the stories this time around. Sophie Jordan's is still my favorite. Basically all 4 of these stories are based off of popular Christmas movies. Tessa Dare's is Meet Me in Mayfair, Meet Me in St. Louis. Sarah McLean's is The Duke of Christmas Present, Christmas Carol. Sophie Jordan's is Heiress Alone, like Home Alone, and then Christmas in Central Park by Joanna Shupe is based off of Christmas in Connecticut. And yeah, Sophie Jordan's is still my favorite of the anthology, but I truly enjoyed all of these pretty equally, and definitely recommend if you haven't read it yet. And then we're getting into 4 5-star reads in a row. Y'all, I am having a good reading month for the most part. So next we have Angel in a Devil's Arms by Julie Ann Long. This is book 2 in the Palace of Rogues series. I mentioned book 1 at the very beginning of this video. Oh my God. This book was incredible, and I totally did not expect to love it as much as I do. I went into this thinking that I was gonna enjoy it just as much as book 1, give it 4 stars, you know, but truly this is leaps and bounds better than book 1. So in this book we're getting Angelique's story, who in book 1 I mentioned that she's the one that becomes friends with Lady Daring, and she was Lady Daring's dead husband's mistress. And so we get her romance with this guy, Lucian. And yeah, these 2 people have a lot of pain in their past, and seeing them bond over that and be vulnerable with each other and fall in love, like, it's just so beautiful and so swoony, and there's also moments that made me laugh out loud because, like I said, in regards to book one, we've got these very quirky people that are staying at the boarding house that Angelique and Delilah, Lady Daring, run together. And it's just, the romance is so good. It's so good. It's one of those romances that like starts out with like witty banter and then slowly becomes serious, and then of course they fall in love, and it's just like the angst is like the perfect amount. Like, it's just, I could talk about this book forever, clearly. It's just, it's amazing. Then we have Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jean. So this was pitched to me as The Princess Diary meets Japan, Japanese society. And this is about our main character, Izumi, and she finds out at the very beginning of the book that her father is actually the crown prince of Japan, and so she ends up going over there and meeting him. And there's two romances going on in this book. She has a romance with her bodyguard, which, that romance is so good. This is actually book one in a series, by the way. And then there's like second chance romance vibes between her father, the prince, and her mom. Like, that was just so sweet, seeing that they both still have feelings, like very strong feelings for each other. Like, there's just, it's great. I will say, like, I gave this 5 stars on Goodreads. It's probably more of a 4.5. I do think that, I don't know, she could have given the characters maybe more depth or something, but maybe that's something that's going to come up in the future books of this series. I think it's going to be longer than just the sequel that's already been announced. I think that's coming out in May. I don't think it's going to be just a duet. So I'm just really looking forward to seeing what Emiko Jean does with these characters and with this story, because this was just so delightful, and I loved the beautiful setting of Japan. Like, reading those passages, it was just beautiful. Then second to last so far up for this month, I read Well Matched by Jen DeLuca. This is book 3 in her Well Met series, and I was so just dying for this book because we're finally getting Mitch and April's romance. These are characters that we met in book 1, and I really wanted their romance to be book 2 of the series, but we got a couple of other characters, and that book was fine. I gave that one 4 stars. I think that was well played. But this one totally redeemed the series for me. Gave it 5 stars. We have Mitch, who's seemingly just like a himbo type guy, but of course he's so much more than that, and he has a heart of gold. And this centers around this Renaissance fair. And Mitch's character wears a kilt, and he sword fights with Simon, who was the hero from book 1. And April's a single mom. Her daughter is 18. She's getting ready to go to college. And so April's dealing with like the empty nest thing, and she's dealing with, you know, how is she going to let Mitch in? You know, she's been on her own with her daughter for so long. This is also a fake dating situation, and it's just exquisite. It's so, so good. It's everything that I wanted from Mitch and April's story. And last but certainly not least, I have Perfect on Paper by Sophie Gonzalez. I just gushed about this book for a solid 15 minutes in the weekly reading vlog that I'm currently filming at the moment. But this has vibes of the show Sex Education, which I think is a show on Netflix. I have not watched it yet, but that's what this was marketed as. We have Darcy. She is an anonymous relationship counselor for the classmates at her high school. Basically, people will drop letters into this locker 89, and she will anonymously answer them in an email. And she just gives really amazing relationship advice. She is someone that has truly done her research about relationships and all of the issues that go into them, basically. And there's also this kind of like messy love triangle going on, and it was just so amazing. Like, I will just point you to my reading blog if you want to know my full in-depth thoughts, because like I said, I went on about it for a while. But this is easily one of the best YA books that I've read in a very long time. I just adore the way that this book discusses things such as like bisexuality, being queer, relationships, whether that be romantic or friendships, and even relationships with your parents. Like, it's just really hits so many marks, and I can't recommend it enough. So with that being said, that's going to be it for this mid-December reading wrap up. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to tell me about some of the books that you've been reading this month, or your favorite book that you've read so far this month. I love hearing from you all in the comments, and I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so, so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!